Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wine Wednesday. I'm Kevin Addix with the Maryland Wineries Association here at Linganore Winecellars. Some of our team had a meeting here. We were doing some tastings, and I'm now in the barrel room. They were generous enough to let us do a live chat here. So we're going to have a cameo from Melissa from Linganore coming in at some point. They are harvesting grapes, a lot of grapes today. Today is Chamberson Day at the winery. But we've got a great group of folks here to talk today about harvest. So we're talking about harvest. It is harvest time in Maryland, which means that our grapes are ripe and wineries are either hand picking or mechanically picking lots and lots of grapes, tons of grapes to turn into wine that will be released, some as early as later this fall, but whites usually in the spring and then reds thereafter. So one by one, let me introduce panel here. So first up, let me jump to the Eastern Shore and invite Judy Crow and Brandon Hoy from Crow Vineyards up on the screen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. So, yeah, thanks for coming. So tell us just a little bit about Crow Vineyards, and then we'll come back after we introduce the panel, and we'll jump into talking about harvest.
Sure. Okay, so Crow Vineyard Winery is a third generation working family farm. We have 12.5 acres of grapes. Brandon is our son and manages the vineyard and oversees wine production. So he is the expert in being able to talk about, how the harvest is. I think it's been great. We've had a lot of people helping us and everybody's been very happy and supportive, but I'm looking at it with a whole different lens than what he does, because people are just dying to get out and be a part of the harvest process. So thanks for having us, and look forward to hearing what everybody's doing.
Well, thank you, and we've tried to make this regionally representative. So you're coming in representing the Eastern Shore. So go Eastern Shore. So with that, I would love to bring up to the screen Garry Cohen from Western Maryland. So Garry is with Mazaroth Vineyard in Middletown, which is not Western Maryland, but you're representing the mountain tier. Garry, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Central Maryland.
Yeah, of course.
Probably a better description. We're on the western side of Frederick County.
Okay.
We're very small, probably one of Maryland's smallest wineries, about 2 acres of grapes. Our production is maybe 500 cases of wine a year, 6,000 bottles or so. And we'll dive into the harvest but in a little bit, but so far it's been a pretty good year. Not quite as stout as 2019, but quite good. We're proud of what we've been able to craft so far. And back to you.
Thank you very much, Garry. Coming to you live. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about harvest in a moment, and now we're going to jump down to Southern Maryland. We've got Bob and Susan joining us from Robin Hill Vineyards.
Yeah.
Hello.
How you doing?
Great to see you.
Wonderful. So give everybody a reminder of Robin Hill.
Well, Robin Hill Farm and Vineyards, we're a family farm. We've been farming since 1955. We started out as hog farmers, tobacco farmers, nursery, and agritourism, and now we're a winery and vineyard in Brandywine, Maryland, part of the Legacy Wine Trail. We have 5 acres of grapes. We have 3,100 vines. We grow Chamberson, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot, and our whites are Chardonnay, Vidal Blanc, and Chenin Blanc. And this is our winemaker and the love of my life, my husband. Go ahead and give him a little more, honey.
Don't know what to add to that, actually. That's what we're doing here. Production of between 1,200 and 1,500 cases a year. And we do everything here from growing the grapes to bottling. We have our own little bottling line, and we have total control of the entire process. So that's what we do here at Robin Hill.
I'm going to remember, give him a little more, honey. That's what I'm going to remember.
There was a little.
whatever it takes to make wine, right? So we'll get back to talking about harvest in just a moment. And also, I see behind me is our cameo appearance by Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Aellen. I'm one of the winemakers here at the Vineyard Winecellars. This is definitely a cameo appearance. And I guess, what else should I say?
Yeah, that's it.
Linganore's been around since 1976. My family started it back then, and I came back about 3 years ago, working with Ray Mitchum as our head winemaker, and we operate the winery out here in Mount Airy, Maryland.
And so let me start with you, since we're sharing a screen here.
Yeah, sure.
So what's happening with harvest in general, and then what happened today?
Sure. So harvest in general has been going really well, mostly so far. We got a little hit with that Hurricane Laura that came through. We made some decisions based on what the forecasters had forecasted, and they changed their forecast, and it kind of messed us up. Our dry vineyard program took, luckily we saved it, but it was like looking pretty iffy there for a second. So that has been saved, but since then we really haven't had a lot of rain. We got some rain last night, not much, maybe I think we got 1/4 of an inch. And went out this morning with our mechanical harvester. He picked 26 tons of Chamerson today that just finished. So in a second, I have to go back into the winery and tell them what to inoculate it with.
So that's 26 tons
Yes.
in one day. And so mechanically harvested, tell us how that works.
So it's basically this like glorified shaker that goes over top of the row of grapes. It has these finger things on the inside. They rotate back and forth and shake the vine. And the individual grapes, not the stems, just fall off the vine onto 2 belts in the bottom that brings it up to the top and over the side into bins that then come into the winery.
So I got to witness the bins coming into the winery, which, I mean, it's always incredible to see grapes coming in, but seeing 4 at a time, 3 or 4 at a time coming in. So that's where the hand harvesting compares with the mechanical. So.
Yeah, to give you an idea, today we picked 26 tons of grapes in roughly 8 hours. And on Monday, we picked Barbera, and that was 3 tons of grapes. Sorry, 26 tons of grapes. Roughly 8 hours, 3 tons of grapes in 10 hours. So difference in hand harvesting versus mechanically harvesting. We picked some varieties, depending on which wine they're going to go to, and choose which method we want to use.
Well, Melissa, thanks for the preview. And I know you have to get back to work.
I do have to get back.
So maybe we'll see you a little bit.
Sure.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
All right. So let me bring everybody up on the screen. And what I'd love to do is so you've heard a larger winery mechanically harvesting. That's not what's happening at your places, right? So give us a preview. Maybe Brandon, can you tell us like what happens on harvest morning?
So yeah, we hand harvest everything here. Usually I have a paid crew, and then sometimes we can get some volunteers to come in and help us. Usually they're wine club members or just avid fans of the farm in general. And they'll usually come out and work and help us for, maybe 3 hours at a time. But yeah, we usually harvest anywhere between 2 to 5 tons in a day, not 26 tons. So we typically harvest into lugs, which hold about 25 pounds of fruit. We have a cold storage space. So we usually harvest, goes to our cold storage, and we process it typically the next morning. We'll go into processing the next day. So that's kind of a quick rundown.
Yeah, and I imagine that it's kind of the same at Robin Hill and Mazaroth. Garry, tell me what it's like at your place, because you made the smallest winery in the state.
There's 1 or 2 smaller than us now.
Okay.
We're down there in the bottom 5 in terms of size. It's not too dissimilar what we're doing to what Brandon just described. We hand harvest. Our lugs will hold anywhere between 30 and 35 pounds. We'll do upwards of 2.5 tons of fruit also. There's only 2 varieties that will deliver that much fruit for us anyway. But typically we'll start around 6:30 in the morning. We're unclipping the netting. We net up all of our vines. We're not willing to put up fencing, 10-foot fencing around. We thought we could get away with the netting, and it's worked beautifully. And then once the netting is up, we'll get a crew. We do have several paid employees that will come in and help us during the harvest, and then the rest are, like Brandon was describing, case club members or other people in the local community that just want to squish grapes and pick them and squish them and help us get through the process of it. Depending on temperature, though, we don't have cold storage like Brandon described. So depending on temperature is whether or not we're going to go immediately into a crush to stem and a press with the white wine, or we're going to lay it out or put it away for the evening and let the temperatures cool the fruit. This year, it's been very favorable for us to immediately go into a crush to stem with our fruit, and we're usually able to get the fruit in there before temperatures exceed 60 degrees, which to us is about the perfect temp to start the process.
So Garry, you mentioned netting and fencing. Pests. I mean, this time of year, you're not only are you testing and waiting for the grapes to be spot on, but you're also playing defense. I'll jump to Bob and Susan. What kind of pest pressure do you see? Who wants to eat your grapes before they're ready?
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah, birds are probably the number one varmint we have to deal with. But we are netted. We have netting on the entire vineyard. We do side netting, so we're not encapsulating the entire row. We just run the nets down the sides. Works real well for us. We put them on probably around the 1st of August, as soon as veraison starts, and the birds get the idea that they can't get in there. I mean, we still lose some. They're still pecking through the nets in places, especially along the outer edges, the wood lines. But for the most part, the nets, without the nets, you can tell when you have a hole in your net because there is absolutely no fruit in it in that particular area. So you know the nets are working throughout the rest of the vineyard. Last year, we have a plastic deer fence, by critter fence that encapsulates the entire vineyard. It works well. The deer, we have no deer pressure. They're not jumping it. There's plenty of other farming activities around, soybeans and things for them to eat. So they're, deer are lazy. They're going, I don't want to jump the fence. I'll go eat soybeans instead. So they don't come through. But our little raccoons and possum, they teamed up with the woodchucks last year, and woodchucks chewed holes through the plastic fence and let the raccoons and the possums in, and they did a number. They through the nets, the little fingers, they reach right through the net, pick them berries off, but they're systematic. They were clean. They work panel by panel, so you can follow it every day as they were wiping it out until we say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to knock you off the stream there. So we've had enough of your bird talk. So when it comes to birds, is it a specific bird, or is it any bird that's flying by and just sees fruit? And this is kind of an open question. Is it like starlings, and we pick up your starlings?
It would be any bird that would be coming by if you didn't have the nets on. You have your home birds, the ones that make the nests. They're in the vineyard during the year. Then you put the nets on. They're like, hey, why'd you block us out? We live here. And then you have those massive swarms of the black starlings or grackles or whatever they are that would clean you out in about one afternoon if you didn't have the netting on. I mean, robins, anything will get down. I mean, we put the netting on. We tie it from the bottom. We clip it at the top so it encapsulates the fruit zone area, and because they will go on the ground and they will flutter right up under the nets and go right in. They're pretty ingenious.
So these are well-tuned birds. I know, Judy, we've talked before. Crow Vineyards is kind of on a flyway. I mean, you're right where the birds are migrating.
Somebody apparently told the Delmarva farmer that, and they called and did a little story. It just came out this week about we're on the flyway, and we do have a bird prowling, Brandon nest, and I don't know what to say. Like, it's right here at the house. If I see birds coming in, I have this little squeaker gun. What's it called, Brandon?
It's a siren gun. It's kind of like a little bottle rocket.
Yeah.
But yeah, we net along the fruit zone, and flocks try to come in. They'll hit on the net a little bit, cause a little damage. But for the most part, the netting seems to work pretty well. Anywhere there's a tiny hole, you will get robins will get in there, and they'll meticulously try and pick through, and you can see if you have a hole somewhere in the net, the robins will find it and they'll work their way down the. They'll get inside the net and then just keep popping down and then squirt out another spot.
And we use the net. Tell them about the netting we use. It's not.
So we use just a net wrap. It's not a permanent a net wrap. It's a little more cost effective for us, and it's a little easier. I find easier for installation, and it doesn't sit out in the vineyard for the year, and I don't have to worry about trying to roll it back in meticulously. So, but yeah, birds are definitely an issue. The moment you start getting any kind of juice flowing from bird damage, it becomes a potential for rot, and you'll get other insects in there.
Well, I was going to ask that. So it's not so much just about the birds snacking on the grapes, because everybody deserves a sweet treat now and then. It's about the rot that comes in because of the leaking grapes and the sugar that's now exposed and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Garry, a question for you: is there a variety that birds enjoy more than others?
I wouldn't know because our netting has been so effective. We use permanet that it's extremely rare for us to get a bird in there.
Okay,
but
so
I tell you, all the fruit, it's so sweet. I can't imagine, but I would think based on color, they would go after red fruit more than they would go after the white fruit.
Bob, I see you shaking your head on that.
Yeah, that tends to be the issue.
So they can see it if it's visible fruit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another question from Abby, and this is an open question. Harvest is always exciting. How long does harvest last for each of you from start to finish? And I know that changes every year, but in general, which grapes are going to be first and which grapes are going to be last. About how long is that spread from start to finish? And Bob, we'll start with you.
About 4 weeks.
4 weeks total.
Yeah.
Okay. Garry?
More like 5. Our Albarino will come in typically right around the end of August. Our Cab Sav does not typically come in until the first week of October. So we're about a 5-week spread. Okay.
And so, this goes into some of the variations, not just in variety, but also topography. So Garry, you're at a higher elevation. What's your elevation?
At the top of the vineyard, it's about 800 feet. We drop down to about 700 or 680 at the bottom.
And Judy and Brandon, your elevation is?
About 6 feet. We're flatlanders here. Yeah.
You can smell the water, right?
Yeah. So we're about, I think it's like 60 or 70 feet. But yeah, we're so flat here. It's not much.
And how long from start to finish is your harvest?
For us specifically, it's usually about 5 weeks. We do make wine for other startup wineries, so depending on if they're sourcing fruit, that our crush process tends to be a little later. But for just what's harvested out of our vineyard, it's about 5 weeks. So Pinot Gris usually is our first one in, and that's maybe the last week of August, first week of September, depending. And then Cab Franc's our last one out of the vineyard. And that's usually in a week or so. Yeah. And then
here's a kind of I was going to say round robin, but maybe I shouldn't say round robin question. Here's a round table question, and we'll start with Bob and Susan. What are you looking for to know that the grape is ready to harvest?
Flavor. Flavor of the grape is the flavor of your wine. So you want to have your skinned tannins, your seed color, your seed tannins, and of course we do the science on it, measure the Brix, the TA, and the pH. We want to make sure everything is in balance, and if everything works out perfect, that's a perfect year, and if not, you have this year. So right. That's what we do.
And if not, you have next year, right? So so TA is total acidity. So you're looking at acidity, pH, and flavor. Are you're tasting the grapes?
Yes. So every week I'll go out and we'll do a berry sampling. We go through each variety, take about 200 berries, bring them in, crush them up, drain that juice off, and we'll run the science on the juice, and then I just take a handful of that mush and just pop it in my mouth and just start, seeing how it tastes and seeing how the skins feel in the inside of the mouth, and chew them up, and look at the seeds. If they're nice and brown, then I'll chew them. If they're green, I already know what the issue is, so I don't chew them up. But just seeing where your tannin levels are in your fruit, in your skins and seeds.
So a question for Garry. Garry, you're one of the first in the state, if not the only still, who's growing Tannat.
Mm-hmm.
New grape, new variety of the region. How did you know the first year when that grape was ripe and ready to go? What were you looking for?
Very similar to what Bob was saying, in that I was looking for the skins to be ripe. I was looking for the seeds to be brown. And I was hopeful that we would have a sugar level that was well into the 20s, and we achieved all of that. It's not an easy variety to work with in the vineyard. Before every other vineyard starts rushing in and start plant this, we have Cab Franken and Cab Sav. To me, they're a joy to work with. Tannat I wouldn't describe as a joy. It's kind of a little bit more difficult and a bit more of a challenge, and we're dealing with some issues with Crown Gall with our Tannat, because it's not the cold hardiest of varieties. It's from the southwestern part of France, so it's a warmer area in France. But the fruit is exceptional to us. Even in 2018, which in most wineries was disastrous, we were still able to get 21 bricks on it. Last year we hit nearly 25. I mean, these are Napa numbers on our Tannat. We don't have that wine bottled yet. It's still probably 6 months out, but it's been an extraordinary success for us.
And for those who are watching who think 2020 is just a rough year all around and don't really recall 2018, for the vineyard industry, 2018 was, what's one word to describe it?
Horrible.
Disastrous.
Horrible, disastrous. The words that came to mind for me.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, they're not arable, so I'm not going to say them. But it rained a lot, and it rained at all the wrong times. And when you're dealing with vineyards, Brandon and Judy, maybe you can describe why rain is good in the spring and rain is bad the rest of the year.
Well, rain is good in the spring to get things started, get things growing. But as you get closer to harvest, and as you start to have berry development, you don't want rain. You want as little rain as possible. The less rain, you have more concentrated flavors in your fruit. You have less water uptake from your vines. Your vines end up slowing down their growth. They'll be less vigorous in a drier year, which is great. Wetter year, you end up with a little bit more herbaceous qualities in your fruit and a lot more water in your fruit. So the flavor in a wet year is a lot less concentrated, and it's a lot more dilute. So it's a challenge in wet years. I would say, surviving 2018, I feel like we can come out of just about anything now, and still sell wines that I thought, not even sell them, but people like them and enjoy them. So, there's always kind of a little silver lining. You get through it and you realize, wait a minute, it's okay. It'll turn out okay.
Well, and we've seen that. Bob and Susan, maybe you could tell us what came of your 2018 fruit, because we've seen some very nice wines come out of 2018. Even though even from Linganore, our one of our oldest wineries in the state, opened up in 1976 or 74. They said 18 was the single worst year ever. So what were you able to make of 2018?
It took a lot of extra work, especially on the crush pad, making sure that the fruit was as clean as it could be. I mean, we had to do a lot of extra culling, making sure the rot was taken out. Doing procedures in the winery itself to ensure that any potential bacteria were removed, and that spoils the wine. So the big trick was getting the spoilage out and then working with what flavors we had left, increasing our sugars, getting up so we have a nice alcohol level. The addition of tannin was critical in 18, just to get you some nice mouthfeel. Also with some tartaric acids, getting the mouthfeel, so you have something in your mouth. It's not just colored water that you're drinking. So there was a lot of additional work in the winery, and our 18 wines are good. I'm enjoying them. I was ready to compete them this year and see what happened, and we're I don't know. I'm happy with them. Our customers seem to be enjoying them, and we're looking forward to the 19 releases. Believe me.
Well, and that's the thing with wine, and I think customers sometimes lose track of the fact that this is not a commodity. This is not a box of Cheerios you're pulling off the shelf. This is a product that's completely dependent upon weather and soil and topography and everything else, and you have good years and bad years. And so Judy and Brandon, what happened with 2018 with you guys?
I want to say something before Brandon gets started, because remember, I'm not actually doing all the work like he is, but I feel like when we have a bad year, it's really, really important to keep everybody's spirits up. And I'm probably move into the mode of cheerleader and morale person, because there's nothing worse than bringing in a harvest and having everybody upset with it. So that's always a challenge for us. We're a small group of people, small family. I'm trying to keep everybody okay. Well, we'll get through this, And I think Brandon's attitude, 2018. I thought maybe that might be the last year he ever does this. But his attitude is, we've seen the worst, so nothing can be worse than that. And we ended up selling off quite a bit of fruit that year and making decisions maybe not to make some of the wines. Like
we made a lot of rosé.
We made a lot of rosé.
Pulled a lot of Sangria to help concentrate our reds. We also, in rough years, we have a really good team. I want to give a shout out to our winemaker, Mike Zolo. So he, I think, started with us in 2017. So in 18, he was, as we were all pretty shocked at the growing season, but, this was kind of his first East Coast hard East Coast harvest. He learned a lot that year. And I think by having him as kind of a teammate and a partner working out some things in the winery, I feel like that really helps to have someone else that you can kind of bounce ideas off of and be really creative at the crush pad. I mean, there's times where you're just bringing in fruit and you go, okay, we're going to change plans and we're going to make something completely different. How can we do this? And so you just have to be flexible and, try and be creative.
So Garry, let me jump to you. So 2018, you said it actually worked out okay for you. Are you in this magic unicorn spot where the clouds just go around you?
No, 2018, I have a rain gauge, and I do rain gauge readings every single day, and I keep those notes. 2018, we had 61 inches of rain, and we normally get 40. When we pulled the Tannat in, you literally have, for us, you're at that moment, you have to decide whether or not you're going to make a full-bodied red or you're going to do a rosé. And we, right on the crush pad, said, let's just go for it and see what we can get out of it. And we turned, because Tannat is such a heavy grape, and in some years we will press it at 2/3 of sugar extraction still, and we'll finish the fermentation like a white wine because it can be so overpowering. 2018, it turned out to be a little softer than we would like, but certainly it was within the lines, so to speak. So it worked out okay.
So something that and you guys have been in the industry, many of you longer than I have, but in my last 15, 18 years, I've seen an incredible evolution from a bad year just tanking the industry. And guess what? People still released wine, and it may not have been the best wine, but they still released it. to now either making business decisions saying, all right, we're not going to have reds this year. Done. Or the technology, the innovation, the skill has increased to the point where you were able to salvage something and then make something very interesting and creative, a different blend, a new style of wine that hadn't been done before. So I'm actually, now that we're in that drop zone of wines from 2018, I've had some reds from 2018. They're good. They're not what they would have made if it were a good year, right? But it's an interesting, innovative, separate set of blending techniques and everything else. I'd love to hear what you or your winemakers have done, because I know, at least in the case of Crow, Michael's the winemaker and he's not on. What did you have to deploy, or what skills did you have to employ to make quality wine in 18? I'll throw that open.
So for us in 18, like I said, we made a lot of rosé. We made sparkling. The numbers worked out pretty well for sparkling, and we already have a sparkling program. So we ramped up our sparkling program for 18. We made some of our reds into sparkling. We did a sparkling Barbera. So for us, those were some of our kind of decisions, was like if we felt like the reds weren't going to fully make it to create enough mouthfeel and tannin and have enough structure and development, we really pushed it into another program that we had already existed, but we just ramped that one up. And then in 19, we just kind of did the inverse and ramped up our red production and reduced our sparkling production. So having kind of some flexibility in your portfolio really helps if you're working with a lot of different wines. Also, after 18, we decided in good years we're going to keep a few barrels behind and use that to help us along to create some continuity of product. So now that's what we do. So we have some we're keeping behind.
Some different techniques, different products. Bob, Susan, how about you? All rosé all the time?
No. Although we did, like Brandon said, we drew off juices at the crush pad to make our rosé, which then just intensified what was behind with the skins. So that helped greatly. That was an essential move there. With our Chenin Blanc, that it pretty well rotted real bad. We cleaned it out. We made it. It still had a little. There was still something wasn't quite right with it. So we sweetened it up a little bit, and we only made 30 gallons because that's all we had. That's all that came in. Just a touch of sugar to take off that odd flavor, and man, it just went off the shelf within a month. That whole it was all gone. So in 19 we had 350 gallons of Chenin Blanc, and everybody was pounding on the door. Where's that Chenin Blanc? So I just I said, well, we did it that way. Let's make that our standard, just an off dry Chenin Blanc, and it just jumps out the door. So so from what was probably a disaster has now turned into one of our lead recipes. So yeah, it's always a silver lining somewhere. So
there was an opportunity there,
right?
Which is pretty cool. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned, what each of you have learned over the years when growing grapes. So, we talk about harvest, and this is obviously a discussion about harvest, but harvest, we know how to harvest, right? Have you changed how you grow the grapes? Have you changed what you're looking for mid-season? Have you learned to drop more fruit? Talking with a winery today, they said they had their vineyard consultant come in and say, I know you want to harvest this today, but cut half of the fruit and harvest it next week. So you cut half of the fruit today, you can make a rosé or something out of it and come in and harvest it next week. The balance of that fruit to make a heavier, bigger red. And I hadn't heard of someone coming in this late in the season doing that. Have you learned anything? I'm sure you've learned things. So tell me what you've learned. Garry, we'll start with you. What have you learned in your years growing your fruit?
That I have so much more to learn. That's the number one thing.
Okay, we're done.
To me, winemaking is not that challenging. I don't know why. It seems natural to me the way winemaking. You need a little algebra, you need a little chemistry. But grape growing is exceedingly difficult in this area with this in subtropic conditions trying to grow fruit around here. As corny as it sounds, you have to let the vines talk to you, and you have to listen to what they're telling you, and you have to look at them and pay attention. You have to be in the vineyard every single day. We take pride in the fact that we prune our vines. Probably we can get through the vineyard once every 10 days, and we probably do 10 to 12, at least 10 to 12 prunes on each vine each year. So we're very fanatical about what our practices are in the vineyard, and we continue to look for ways to improve. For instance, if we expect it's going to be hot and with climate change, we don't pull leaves off the west side of the vines anymore. We just do it off the east so the fruit gets sun exposure in the morning, but it doesn't get they don't turn into raisins in the afternoon, so to speak. We are changing and are amending our shearing practices at the top for Japanese beetles, so we go a little bit higher than we normally would because the Japanese beetles are attracted to the leaves at the top of your vines. Those little type of things that we continue to try to improve.
Bob, Susan?
As far as what we're changing in the vineyard, we grow everything on BSP, so that's the standard. I tend to leave a little more fruit on the unlike the Vidal, the more vigorous, the Chardonnay, other vigorous. We leave more fruit in that because it's just got the canopy to handle it. This is our first time I've ever grown Chenin Blanc is here. And come to find out, it's a very, very large, tight cluster of grapes that will rot out in a heartbeat. So lesson learned. I tried to let a little more fruit hang this year, and it didn't work. So I know that next year, yeah, we're definitely going to go back to 2 clusters per shoot. Keeping them really thin. So just learning, especially with the new varieties. The old standards, just keeping everything at 2 clusters per shoot seems to work well with the others. The Chamberson, I'll leave a little more hang on there just because that's another beastie vine. It can handle the load within reason, no more than 3 clusters per shoot. But so, yeah, definitely crop load is key.
And I've been hearing a lot about crop load lately where some varieties, some of the newer varieties that are being discussed have higher crop loads and some, obviously you get a much better fruit with a lower crop load. Brandon and Judy, what have you guys learned?
I would just kind of reiterate what these 2 guys are saying, but I think every year you're just trying to evaluate based off of the weather patterns and what is happening in the vineyard. I'm out there every day. I'm out there with my crew, and everything just has to be done in a timely manner. If it's not, then you get behind, and that's when you get into problems. If your fruit zoom needs to be leafed, it needs to be leafed immediately. And at the moment you get behind, that's when you start seeing problems and challenges. You mentioned earlier the selective harvest, going through and doing a selective harvest and then coming back and harvesting the rest out a little later. We've done that before a few times, and I think we did it 2 years in a row, and it worked out pretty well for what we had slated. We were making a sparkling, and then we came back and harvested again for a still wine. But it was challenging to ensure, especially when you're working with either a small group of harvesters or if you don't have a really an educated group with you that's working with you. That can be a challenge. You get a lot of uneven clusters being pulled. So that's just kind of my 2 cents.
So I'll ask, thank you for that. I'll ask the voice on my shoulder, Melissa Aellen, the same question. What have you learned about harvest parameters and growing grapes over the years? How have you changed what you've done?
Sure. This has been like a constant struggle, maybe isn't the right word, but a constant conversation about how to change the mindset from quantity over quality, right? Because you can't really have both. It's a balance. The vines are in balance, the wine's in balance, everything is in balance. You can't overcrop and make the best wine ever, and you can't undercrop and make the best wine ever. It's all about a balance between those. So we have some varieties, say like our Vineyard, it's a hybrid that makes an excellent dry white wine that I mentioned earlier. We can crop that at 4 to 5 tons an acre and still get that quality. Now, if we went to 6, we'd be a completely different situation. Talk about 6 on Cab Franc? No way. So it's all about like what the vineyard can handle, how it all works together, and it's been a conversation we've been having as a family over the last couple of years about how we bring that all in balance and work together to make the best wines we can with what we've got planned.
So, I mean that basically sums it up. That it's about the vines and everything else that goes into it. Melissa, you mentioned family. Last question, just going around. Harvest time, traditionally, you rope everybody into it. Bob and Susan, tell us about getting family involved.
Fortunately, we have lots of family that live right here on the farm. We have a tight community. We have wine club members, and everybody thinks that harvest is cool, and they love to do it. So, right when they know harvest is about to start, they're contacting us like, please tell us when harvest is going to be. And I'm like, yeah. So, make sure that we start at 7 o'clock in the morning. We have donuts and coffee and fruit and water for everybody. And it becomes a social thing. I mean,
It actually doesn't sound that bad.
Right? It's great. Who wants to help? We're doing it this weekend. And afterwards, when we're done, we have lunch and a glass of wine, and everybody gets to sit around and, look at the fruits of their labor, and they get to watch the crush process afterwards, and it's very satisfying to them. And people just love the experience. So, and we're grateful for that.
That's great. Garry, I know that you've got, obviously Mickey, and obviously your vineyard guard dog, who I'm not sure is very helpful during harvest, but tell me who you get to help out.
Thankfully, we have 3 children that are all very interested in helping us in the vineyard, and it's an all hands on deck type of experience. It's not that hard to get people to come out the first time and do this. It's to get them to come out the second and the third time, and everybody's laughing because it's true. They realize, man, this is a lot of work.
Right.
But it seems like magically every year we reach out to the people that are affiliated with us, our case club members and friends and neighbors, and magically we get the right number of people to help out every single year. And you can't have enough hands out there when you're manually harvesting. So our last one is day after tomorrow. We're bringing the cab sav in. For us, it's a half an acre. That's a lot of grape for us because we're kind of small. But we just show it up there, and believe it or not, we actually do. We put out sulfited buckets of water for people to step in, and if they want to squish grapes at their feet, go for it. And it seems like every year there's always somebody shows up in a peasant skirt and bandanas, and away they go. You try to make it fun.
I'm good till the first bee sting, and then I'm out.
Oh, right.
First bee sting, and I'm out. Judy and Brandon, who helps out with harvest? Is it all hands on deck?
Yeah, all the employees, like everybody, no matter what your job is, it's harvest time. You have to help harvest. And when we hire people, we kind of make that sort of known. The food thing, we do that. The other thing that we do is we start looking for volunteers like right now for next year. We'll probably harvest the Cab Franc soon, and right after that, we'll be done. And we do that in the tasting room. We just say, if you want to sign up to be a volunteer, circle here, sign up, and we add you to our mailing list. And when it comes time, we start emailing people, and people start showing up. Interestingly enough, we do have a few people that are like hooked and think it's so cool, and they come out and they really support everybody else. But we got a lot of newbies, and like on Saturday we were harvesting and it was raining. people were coming in, and I said, "Oh, did you want to harvest? Are you here to harvest before you start drinking?" And we did get people. Yes, we're here to harvest.
Right.
And we'd send them out to harvest. It's like, hurry up, let's hurry up and get this done before it starts to rain. And they'd come back and they're like, that was so wonderful, So, you just have to be creative.
Do you like
Yeah,
take
all hands-
reservations? Yeah, for 4 people for 2 tons, please.
If only.
All right. So I said that was the last question, but just speed round, and then we'll go around, and I'll end with Melissa behind me, and we'll sign off now by saying thank you very much for doing this and for being involved. But Bob and Susan, what is the highlight grape coming in, and when will that grape be in the bottle? Just to give someone some context. What are you most excited about, and when can they taste it?
Well, normally I would say I'd be most excited about the Chenin Blanc, but I'm not giving up on that. That's got to work my magic, and we will have that in the bottle probably in June.
Great, Gary.
The Tannat Cab Sav Cab Franc blend. The Tannat came in quite good. It was a challenge. It's the first time we ever had a frost after bud break this year. I've never experienced that before, but it didn't diminish the amount of our quantity. Like I said, the Tannat's getting pressed off tomorrow. The bricks were good. The Cab Sav, the Cab Franc is amazingly even ripeness across the fruit. Cab Sav comes in tomorrow. That stuff will not be in bottle for about 1.5 years. So I'm looking probably the spring of 2022, but it looks like it's going to be quite the story, that one.
Okay, so 18 months, and that just puts it in perspective that what we're doing now isn't tasteable. I mean, it's not going to be made public for 18 months, which is incredible. All right, Judy and Brandon.
Well, what's top on my mind right now is our Barbera, and we're also doing a Barbera Rosé. We just picked that over the past couple days, and we've been processing that. And both of those wines, I think, are going to turn out really nice. They tend to turn out really good for us. And so we will release our Barbera Rosé probably in May, April or May, and then it'll be about 1 year and some change for the standard Barbera.
Great, and I'll end with Melissa, the voice on my shoulder.
Sure. So we haven't really brought in any of our vinifera reds yet. We're still holding off on that. As far as what's in tank right now, the Albarino and our Chamberson Rosé, which goes by the name of 7th, I'm really excited about both of those, and they'll be bottled before the end of the year and come out sometime spring, early summer of next year.
Well, great. So thank you, everybody, for being involved, and I'll give you a big wave sign off. I should do it not in Melissa's face. So thank you all so much, and good luck with the rest of harvest. And with that, I will just say thanks to everybody for joining us on Wine Wednesday. And just as a tip, I've been teasing this. We have a new wine club coming up, a Maryland wine club, exclusive to Maryland residents only. So if you're in Pennsylvania, sorry, go love your Pennsylvania grapes, because they need a lot of support as well. But for Maryland residents, you're going to have access to this Maryland Wine Club, the Wine Explorer Club, coming up starting in October. So please stay tuned for that. And we're very excited about the wines that will be in there and just the concept in general. So with that, good luck to all of our wineries, and cheers to you.